I'm going to show you how I write my nonfiction books using AI as a productivity tool rather than a replacement. And I'll show you how it consistently makes me over $1,000 a month with just 3 books so far. So if I take you into my analytics here, this is just from this last month, the month of August. And as you can see, these 3 books that I have, these are the only nonfiction books that I've written so far, have made over $1,000 so far. Or at least in the month of August. And actually the most recently published of these was the plot module. If we click on that, you can see this here. It was published in January 1st of 2025. So it's been over 9 months since this was published, which means this is actually a phenomenal number considering it's been 9 months since this was published. And I'm going to tell you how I got it to be this way. And this is just kind of an average. You know, this is just from last month of August. Sometimes it's a little lower, but most of the time it's actually a little higher than this. And certainly when I first released the plot module, the most recent book in the series, it was a lot more. I think the most I ever got in 1 month from these nonfiction was about twice this, around 2,000. So this stuff works. I can show you how I did it. And by the way, I have a whole membership where I teach authors how to use AI effectively as a productivity tool in their writing without sacrificing their ethics and creativity. If you'd like to join us and get to the point where you can write up to a book in a month, and I'm talking about books that have real and true ideas or stories that are yours, not just rehashed ideas from other people's books, then check out the link down below. We cover both fiction and nonfiction inside of this membership. So now I'm going to go over 5 tips on how to get real success with your books, particularly even if you are using AI in the process of writing them. And tip number 1 is perhaps the most important, and that is to be obsessed with your topic. You cannot make it as a nonfiction author just regurgitating ideas that other people have done. You have to be obsessed with the topic. And my favorite way to actually do this, to really make progress in your obsession with that topic, is to start a YouTube channel to document your learning, or to be a place where you can teach and test ideas. We know that the best way to learn a topic is to teach it. So if you really want to become obsessed with the topic, I would strongly recommend starting a YouTube channel, or at least some other kind of social media, something video ideally, where you can teach these ideas and test them to see which ones get the most traction with other viewers. And I know this is going to rub some people the wrong way who just want to write their book and be done with it, but this kind of is how the world works these days. Like, especially if you want to teach something and make a living teaching some kind of idea, then a book is really just the tip of the iceberg in what you need to be doing. And honestly, a book can sometimes be really limiting, because when you're writing a book, you don't necessarily have the testing and the validation that your ideas are good. With something like a YouTube channel, you're constantly putting out content, and then suddenly you might have a video pop off and you realize, oh, this idea really resonates with a lot of people. And then you can go and hone in on that idea, test it a bit more, make more videos around that topic, and then produce your book. And you know that that book is going to have a much stronger chance of success. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to come up with what I just call the special sauce, and come up with that first. And this is usually some kind of framework or system, because people really love a step-by-step system that gets them a result. So try to do that. Identify where your ideal customer is now, where they want to go, then carefully chart out the step-by-step strategies to get there. This was essentially the entire premise of my book, The Plot Module, which is my best-selling book so far. This book is basically a complete framework for writing a book from A to Z, starting with chapter 1. It tells you what should happen in chapter 1, what should happen in chapter 2, etc. for 40 chapters. There's flexibility built in there, of course, but it's a great resource for brand new writers who really have no idea how to plot a book. This will just walk you through the entire process in a way that I've never seen any other author do to this degree. And so that was the premise behind this book, and it remains to this day my best-selling book. And actually, before this was a book, this actually started as a framework that I built here, where I just did a couple of bullet points on what should happen in each chapter. So we have like chapter 2, mystery and theme, chapter 3, link to the antagonist, etc. And I just built this out first. And this is what I would call that secret sauce, the framework that was uniquely mine, that I created after doing tons and tons of research. That's why step 1 is to be obsessed with the topic, do all your research, go look for everything you can on the particular topic, and then you can start to create your own formulated version of that topic that is uniquely yours. And that's what this was for me with the plot module. And it has been a really great guide for a lot of people. I get positive feedback on this one all the time. And like I said, it's my best-selling book. But I started with just this framework. And then from here, once I had this, I was able to build out the entire book around it. So that's step 1, be obsessed with the topic. And step 2, come up with your special sauce. Now, once you have your special sauce, step 3 is to create your story bank. Now, these are special stories that are either personal to you, someone you know, success stories that you might have had from a client that you used to work with, or a story from a mentor who used it to teach you something, and you're just passing that information along. And regardless of where they come from, you need actual real life stories if you want to truly get your message across. So much AI written nonfiction is just information, and even the non-AI written stuff often is just information, which means in order to be excellent and to rise above the mediocre information and books out there, you need to be including stories. Now for step 4, along with those stories, and kind of related, you should have proof. Okay, do you have clients or statistics to back up your claims? If not, you might want to get some. This one is admittedly a little bit harder for those who are just starting out, so it can wait until a second edition of your book, or once your book has had your methods out long enough that you can collect some testimonials or some other forms of proof. But at the very least, if you have like a personal story associated with your framework, that can be enough proof to get started with. That's really all I have here with this book. I just have my own experience with it, but I do plan on doing a second edition of this someday. And at that point, I would add in a whole lot more testimonials and other people that have found this book to be really helpful for them. Which leads us to step number 5. My last tip here is that once you have all of the research frameworks and stories, then you write the book. It's only after you've done all of that that you actually have your book. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what that looks like for when I was writing the plot module. I have a similar process for the other books that I've written, but let's dive into that. All right, so I'm here in Atticus. This is the program that I use to format my books to be published. And this is my copy of the plot module here in Atticus. And as you can see, I've got the chapters listed here on the left side and just the main content here in the center. So as you can see, we've got the very first chapter is this introduction. We start out with every author is different. So what works for me might not work for you. This is a phrase I hear a lot in author circles. Almost anytime someone asks an experienced author about their writing craft. How should I structure my plot? How do I have well-rounded characters? Should I use the hero's journey or is something else better? How much time should I spend on my world building? Is Save the Cat better than the 3-act structure? Should I outline or figure out the story as I go? The answer is almost always, it depends. And I hate that. What really gets me is if you ask those same authors about business and marketing, they will almost always have more concrete answers. But when it comes to craft, the advice isn't nearly as helpful. So as you can tell, I'm starting with a story. And I get more into my motivation for writing this book. And this chapter, everything you just heard me read, that was all written by me. And this is kind of how I tend to write all of my nonfiction. Is it tends to be a very loose difference between the stuff I write and the stuff AI writes. I kind of just go back and forth whenever I feel that I need one or the other. Sometimes I know I need my own personal touch a little bit more. That's especially true when I'm telling a story that's from my own life. And sometimes we get to, particularly even the more information heavy parts where I know AI can handle certain bits better and more thoroughly and more effectively than I can. So for instance, we've got this chapter here, which is the 40 chapter plot module overview. And now it's time to dive into the full 40 chapter plot module. I've included just a brief summary of each chapter here so you can get a general overview. We'll go deeper in the next few chapters. And then I have literally like a 1 to 2 sentence summary of every chapter and what is in it, just to give a quick overview. Now, this is a case where I could have gone and done all of this myself, but I had already created this framework that you saw here by this point, where I had like just bullet points of what happens in each chapter. And I really didn't want to have to bother to try and sum that all up in 2 sentences each. And plus, I know AI is really good at summarization. So all I did for this chapter is I took this framework that you see here, and I went into AI and said, summarize each of these in 2 sentences. And this is what it gave me. I did, of course, read through it to make sure it's accurate, to make sure I agreed with the way it said things. But this is a good example of where I know the AI can do this very well and very effectively using my framework and my information. And this is why it's important to have your frameworks, your strategies, your systems in place before you even start writing with AI. And it's also helpful to have your story bank and your testimonials, your proof, all of that assembled beforehand. Because once you have that data, that information, you can give it to the AI and it will help you to turn that into something that you can include as part of the book. And by doing so, you're actually creating something unique with the AI as a productivity tool, rather than just using AI to pump out regurgitated information that anybody could also get. And I hope that nuance makes sense for you. If we go through more chapters here, we have Act 1. This is where we start to go a little bit more in depth on each idea. And I did actually use AI for part of this, namely this informational part. I just gave it the framework for what happens in that chapter and asked it to write a section that basically explained that in more depth. But then there's this part here where I give examples of that chapter from a number of different movies or books. So we have Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, The Matrix, Star Wars: A New Hope, The Hunger Games, The Lion King. We have more examples as we go along. But these I did myself, because I did actually test AI with this to see if it could accurately identify these scenes in each of these movies or books. And it did not do a good job in most cases. So I actually pulled up, like The Matrix, I pulled up the movie The Matrix and actually was scrolling through the scenes, making sure that I found each of the scenes as they are talked about in my plot module thing. So it really is a hybrid of me writing and the AI writing, and understanding the nuances of when AI can help you and when it is better off for you to do the thinking, right? Because I do see that as the main nuance between them. Is the human, still needs to be doing the thinking and assembling a lot of the information that you're going to be basing this off of. But then AI can then help you in the doing, in the execution of those things. And for me, it tends to be a much more fluid process in that whole thing. So my nonfiction writing process is a little bit more imprecise when compared to my fiction writing process. But it does do obviously very effective for me, as you can see from the money that these 3 books are making for me. And this is essentially the process I've done for all 3 of the books, with little elements written with AI, but based on my very clear structures and outlines, and then other elements written entirely by me. Now, if that was helpful for you, please check out my Story Hacker Gold program below to learn more about writing books with AI in a way that doesn't compromise your humanity. And I will see you in the next video.